Hello and welcome to Bosch Professional Live. I'm Chris.
And I'm Danny.
And I'm Ella.
So today, remember, it's a professional live stream, so feel free to pop all your questions in the chat. Hopefully you'll be asking plenty of questions on the topic at hand, but if you've got any questions about anything else, as always, like normal live streams, feel free to pop those questions through the Ella, and towards the end of the live stream, we'll answer all your general questions.
Yeah.
So Danny, what's the topic today? I'm sure everyone out there already can kind of guess.
Yeah, I think we've kind of given the game away with the name of the live stream, but today we're going to be talking about our new 18-volt PROCORE Plus. This is a new revolutionary type of cell within a battery that's putting out far more energy than our previous 21700 cells, so a massive boost when it comes to power tool usage.
Do you know what, before we get too started, do you know what? Let's run the video and you can tell us what you think about it after.
Redefining the high-performance battery. The new PROCORE18V Plus. Revolutionary tabless cell technology. Up to 71% longer runtime for your heavy-duty application. More performance. Longer battery lifetime. The new PROCORE18V Plus.
Hopefully that made a little bit of sense. I mean, when we talk about this new battery tech, sometimes we have to also go back and talk about some of our previous battery technology, because sometimes when we are discussing PROCORE18V, and now when we're talking about this new PROCORE18V Plus, sometimes we have to talk about the basics to explain really why and how this battery makes a huge change.
It's worth painting a picture.
That's right.
Going back a little bit and explaining how we've done things in the past.
So, obviously our PROCORE18V battery, here's the example, an 8 amp hour PROCORE18V battery. You are probably already aware of this one. When we came out of the PROCORE batteries, this was the battery that we were using to power our bi-turbo brushless machines, such as, say, this GBH18V-45 or our GWX 18V-15 SC, okay? So remember, the whole point of PROCORE and bi-turbo was to replace those corded machines, to give you corded performance, but running on a single 18-volt battery.
Exactly.
Okay? Now, we knew when we were doing this that one of the things that was going to happen is people were going to use these tools very heavily. Okay? They needed to be designed to be run really heavily. The drawback you have with any battery-powered tool, especially if they're high draw, is you're going to run the batteries down quickly.
Yeah, for some applications, people out there are still using corded products, and obviously they're losing out on the flexibility of having a cordless product. So this really fills in the gap somewhat towards true corded power with the cordless equivalent.
So the feedback we had from our users, or all users of any kind of battery-powered tool, is they'll have a number. One would be under heavy load or any heavy application, say for example, angle grinding, you're really leaning onto the application, you're trying to remove as much material as you can, right? You're flattening your batteries, or you're getting the batteries really hot really quickly. The same thing could be if you're working, say, one of our rotary hammers in chisel mode, and you're really going for it. Right? These machines are drawing a lot of power out of that battery, and as a byproduct, like all batteries, they start to get hot.
Yeah.
Now, we obviously compensated a lot of that heat with things like our cool pack system and our ECP system. So electronic cell protection to try and regulate the current and flow of the energy, to try and keep the battery cool. And then the passive solution, the HDPE material, remember the cool pack system here, to try and pull as much heat as we can out of that cell to try and keep the battery cool. Because otherwise, what you'd experience is you'd get something called derating. As the battery gets hot, you start to lose power, and you might experience that as like a power fade.
Yeah.
And a lot of people out there would think, okay, this battery is probably depleted. They'll take it off and then put a fresh battery on there to on charge, and then put a new battery to start running.
Yeah.
Okay. What you're experiencing there is that derating of a battery due to heat. Okay, and that's particularly important if you're doing high draw applications over a long period of time. Okay, so what we wanted to do is we wanted to find a solution to that.
Yeah.
Another thing is a lot of people would say, I have to keep recharging my batteries, like you've discussed here, or I've got a lot of batteries, I need to have a lot of batteries in my tool bag to compensate for the fact that the battery's going to get hot, I'm going to have to take it off and use another machine, so I need to have more batteries to do certain jobs.
Exactly.
Right, so that's
efficient.
So that's the kind of feedback we got. Power fade when using a battery for a long time, a cordless tool for a long time, and and then as a compensation, I need to either charge my batteries more, or I need more batteries. Now, we came out with some things that helped, such as our big charger, our GAL 18V-160.
Yep, that's a 16 amp. That's the fastest charger that we currently have in range. So absolute beast of a machine there. Right. Can charge up an 8 amp there in what, 35 minutes. 5 minutes of that is basically just to monitor the temperature of the battery and make sure you're not heating it up any more during charging.
That's right. So that helped a little bit, but it didn't really alleviate the core problem, which is the lithium-ion batteries, when used really heavily, will get very hot very quickly. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty on what makes our PROCORE18V Plus battery so different, although if you watch the video you might already know, let's have a little quick look at the difference between the technology that we've had in our CoolPack batteries, our PROCORE18V batteries, and how it differs to what we've got in our new PROCORE18V Plus batteries. So if you jump into the slide, thank you very much, you will see here's a good representation of what's inside either an 18650 cell or a 21700 cell that is in the PROCORE18V. Right, so the 18V battery.
Any cylindrical lithium-ion cell, they're all going to be put together in basically the same way. So inside the cell here you have an anode and a cathode, and in between those you have separators. I mean, it shows two separators here, obviously keeping the anode and the cathode separately, so the positive and the negative terminals within the cell. So these are wrapped around in what we call a jelly roll.
Yeah, I use the analogy, I like using analogies, it's like these layers are like carpets.
Yes.
And you've got your 4 carpets here and you roll them up nice and tight into that, as Danny said, that jelly roll, and then you slide that into a cylindrical cell.
Yeah, so this is isolated from the outside, the metal outside of the actual cell, apart from 2 places. So you've got a positive tab at the top and you have a negative tab at the bottom, that you can see there on the image. Literally just one contact point at the top and one contact point at the bottom. Now this basically works out as a restriction so far as the current or the energy passing out of the cell and causes it to heat up, which is one of the drawbacks of these particular cells when they're being very heavily used. So there's a perfect way to remove that. Actually, you can see on here more of a clear image of those 2 cells and the makeup of the jelly roll there.
That's right, they refer to it as a multi-tab, but essentially you've got those 2 pathways. And the analogy that we've always used to try and explain that is, imagine you have a multi-lane motorway and you've only got one exit ramp. So you've got all this energy in the form of these cars, and they're trying to get off the motorway to essentially out of the cell into the power tool. And that single off ramp essentially is that bottleneck that Danny discussed.
Yeah.
So the option here is, how about we remove, or not remove, we have a tabless battery design. Essentially what you're doing is you're not technically removing, we're not removing the tabs, are we, Danny?
No. Basically they've constructed the cell now where the tabs overlap slightly longer at the top and the bottom, making the entire roll itself an anode and a cathode tab. So although it's called a tabless cell, basically this comes in contact with the inside of each end of the can, eliminating any hot spotting you may get from a single point. The other thing about this as well, during manufacture, you can imagine it's very difficult to weld one of those single tabs as well. So this makes the manufacturing a lot easier as well.
Yeah, essentially, tabless doesn't mean tabless, it means hundreds of tabs.
Yes.
And you can see them all rolled over in those 2 pictures to make almost like a rosette of contact points. If I go to this next slide, you'll see that maybe this graphic helps you illustrate it a bit better, because you've got your anode and cathode carpet or jelly roll part sections. So essentially it's the material there, and you've got your 2 exit points, your anode and your cathode. With the tabless design, as Danny's pointed out, see here in this graphic, you can say the whole perimeter of that layer.
They overlap the same amount, but with extra material at the top and bottom to make up that rosette type design for the connections within the actual cell.
So what does this mean? What's the advantage to us using a tabless cell design? Well, as Danny's already pointed out, one of the biggest advantages, now you've lowered that internal resistance. So remember, we used that analogy before of like the multi-lane motorway.
Yeah.
You've got your tab design with your 2 exit ports, north and south, a multi-lane motorway with two exit lanes, one north and one south. With a tabless cell design, now you've got the ability of having, say for example, you've got 6 lanes on the motorway, and you're going to have, 12 off ramps. There's no resistance.
No restriction there at all.
Exactly.
Restriction with energy is always going to create heat as a byproduct.
And that's what we mean here when we're talking about lower internal resistance. You'll see the difference here at a pack level, which is battery pack level. The lower internal resistance is 28% lower, and then on the actual cell level, it's 50% lower because you don't have that bottlenecking effect. What does this mean for the battery essentially? Is, you can see for the second section, we've got 36% less heating because you don't have that that resistance, that bottlenecking, causing that heat buildup.
That's it. This, along with the precautions we've already taken on our original cool pack system, which have then been brought forward into the PROCORE 18V Plus system, we're taking full advantage of the things like the copper plating to reduce internal resistance there as well.
Yeah.
So it fits the package of PROCORE perfectly.
That's right. So what we're saying here is, you can see from some of the text there, at 90 amps, right? That's our 1500 corded watt equivalent. That's when you're using a PROCORE battery and a bi-turbo machine at absolute full tilt. You're getting the most, you're using this as heavily as possible, getting as much energy out. So that's when you're going to get your biggest advantage, when that battery is really getting hammered. And then that's why you can see here, when it comes to using a PROCORE 18V Plus battery with a bi-turbo brushless machine, you can expect, we can get up to 71% longer runtime.
Yeah, and that's remarkable. So it's way beyond expectations.
Exactly. Because remember, the PROCORE, this particular PROCORE 18V Plus battery is 8 amp hours. Okay, this is a PROCORE standard PROCORE 18V battery with 8 amp hours as well. So in certain applications, this battery, despite being the same amp hour, will give you 71% longer runtime. That particular example is running on the GBH 18V-45C. I think we're drilling 25 mil holes.
Yep, it's 2.1 meters, I think we did on the PROCORE Plus, 1.3 meters on the standard PROCORE battery.
Now, again, those who might be just joining the stream, what we're saying there really is, despite the fact that the energy, the amount of energy stored in these two batteries is the same at 8 amp hours, the efficiency of the tabless cell design means you're not wasting that heat, or you're not losing that energy or wasting that energy in heat, and instead that energy is being used to drive your machine, meaning you're getting so much more runtime.
What I find remarkable as well, you're talking about 18V batteries, 8 amp hours, no discernible change with charge time. Exactly the same.
The same amp, and then again, same physical size, same weight. If I'm being really, really pedantic, I think it's 6 grams different, and it's probably just the extra tabs. You've got 6 grams of extra tabs in the tabless design, giving you that slight weight difference. It's virtually nothing different. Okay. Before we move on, I guess we should very quickly say, look, the internals of our PROCORE batteries is already excellent. We've maintained that with our PROCORE 18V Plus batteries. But as we're talking batteries, might be worth having a quick look down. You've got an example of one of our batteries that's dismantled slightly.
Yep.
And you can see what we've always been doing is always trying to reduce heat and also make the internal resistance much better.
Exactly. So here we have, well, to start off, the HDPE material, the high density polyethylene material we have on here. This is designed to pull the heat away from the cells, and obviously, if your battery's getting warm, this is a good thing. The heat is coming out of the actual battery itself. We actually got armour plating on the corners as well, because we know what people out there are like for using batteries for things that they're not supposed to. As we said before, the contacts at the end of the cell here are all copper, so they are this lower internal resistance, better at handling temperature. And in addition, each one of these cells is individually wrapped in the HDPE material.
So very important.
So there's very little air inside these batteries. Air, of course, being an insulator. So that's going to cause the heat to remain in the battery for a length of time. So
exactly. So
on the side here as well, just before, we also have a TPE material, a thermoplastic elastomer. You can see it in there. It's almost like a neoprene type material. What this does is eliminate more of the air there. Basically, the side casing here is almost like a radiator.
Yes.
So when it's plugged into the 16 amp charger, the fan from the charger blows air past the sides of the battery, and that also cools the battery even more. So there's active cooling built in there as well.
So the point we made here is the fact that yes, with our PROCORE 18V battery, we had all these features implemented because we knew that these batteries were designed to be used very heavily.
Exactly.
We also realized that we wanted to have even more headroom to run these tools at full tilt for longer. And that's why we have the tabless design, tabless cells, inserted into the same PROCORE housing, HDPE material, with the copper contacts, again, to amplify, almost as like a force multiplier, to make these batteries even more efficient, specifically when you're running them really heavy. And what we mean there is when we're driving or doing an application that's drawing the equivalent of 1,000 to 1,500 watts of corded equivalent performance. And you'll expect that on some of our biggest machines, such as our glide miter saw, so the GCM18V-305 GDC, or things like our 8 kilo equivalent hammer, the GBH18V-45.
Especially the grinder range as well.
Exactly,
Obviously
grinders.
the bi-turbo grinder range, really heavy draw depending on obviously what you're doing.
Yeah, what you're doing or how you're using it.
If you're really leaning into material removal, then yes, you're gonna drain the battery pretty quick anyway.
So we've kind of explained a little bit about the internals that make it different, the tabless cells, very important. We don't have an example to show you yet, but trust me, as soon as we get an example, we'll be showing you, hopefully we can show some examples of the internals. Maybe that'll help explaining it a little better.
Yep.
But remember, it's the difference between a tabbed design for the PROCORE battery and tabless cell technology in the PROCORE18V Plus. We've talked a little bit now about some of the performance benefits you get. We've only talked very briefly, saying up to 71%. But if you jump back into the slides, I've got a little table here where we can show some of the examples. As you see, the difference with something like our GBH18V-40, which is one of our, still it's SDS Max rotary hammer, or the 45, which is got on the desk here, you can see you can get up to 50% or up to 71% better performance. Okay, this is when drilling, but obviously it's the same thing if you're running as a chisel.
Yeah.
With the grinder that we talked on the desk, the GWS or GWX 18V-15SC, you get up to 44% more material removal. What we mean there is obviously the machine's running longer, but you're also able to apply more pressure to the application to get more without the machine bogging down. Because that's when you would get the voltage spikes, won't you?
The limiting factor of this machine will be the how quickly it can actually gain access to that power. Obviously, with the corded machine, you've got basically you're plugged into a wall. You've got infinite power, if you will. So the motor could just pull and pull and pull watts. When it comes to a cordless machine, obviously the power is limited. But the more free-flowing it is from the battery into the machine, again, the longer you can use it, the more material you can remove, the more pressure you can put on the machine.
Exactly. So when it came to that miter saw, the GCM18V-305 GDC, one of my favourite tools, right, we're talking about a 12-inch miter saw, right, with a maximum cut of 120 mils, so a massive machine. You've got up to 41% more cuts. We're talking like the difference between like 61 cuts or 88 cuts, depending on the material. So like loads and loads of extra fuel in the tank, essentially. It's not actually fuel, because remember it's the same 8 amp hours, but the batteries are running so much more efficient. You get more out of that power that you put into the battery. Then lastly, you've got things like the circular saw, deceptively quite a high energy draw tool.
Of course, yeah.
And you can get, see, 22% more distance cut, meterage cut on these machines by just changing the battery, upgrading to a PROCORE18V Plus battery. And then lastly, one of our lawn and garden range machines, one of the more recent ones, the blower, for example, if you're running that at full tilt, remember it's 750, I think it's kilometers per hour. No, that's meters cube per something second, isn't it?
Meters cube a minute.
I should know this,
Yeah.
but yeah, I've forgotten already. But something like a high draw machine like that, you can get up to 16% longer runtime. Right, and that's for a very heavy energy draw product, especially running even when running on a PROCORE battery.
I think you find it quite unlikely they're going to be using that on full power most of the time anyway, because it will shift more than just leaves off of the ground at the end of the day.
I mean, we put a variable speed trigger and a speed wheel on it just to try and encourage you not to have to use it at maximum all the time. It doesn't need it. It's got so much power in the tank.
I think anecdotally you usually mention about moving moss off the tarmac. It will pull moss off tarmac.
Yeah, it's so powerful. But that power needs power. And that kind of tool will be very heavy on a battery. So now we've got the tabless cell technology. That means we can compensate for all that extra draw and keep that battery cooler to prevent what we discussed earlier, derating.
Yeah.
So Ella, is this an opportune moment to have a little quick break? See if you've got any questions?
Yep, we've had a few questions come through. The first question is from PF Cutters saying, new battery technology, does it put out more power along with the longer promised runtime?
Now, when it comes to power, so the power is a word that we often hear. We hear it a lot. It's usually abused and overused.
Yeah.
Think of it this way. You've still got the same access to the same amount of power, okay, same amount of current. Remember, we're saying a PROCORE battery is outputting about 90 amps.
Yeah, we're talking about wattage equivalent here. Power is usually expressed in watts. With a battery, it's slightly different. We can't do it in watts. We can do it in wattage equivalent, or we can do it in watt hours. But watt hours and amp hours aren't really, they're not really comparable. So we tend to use a wattage equivalent.
Exactly. But when we're talking about current, we say, and let's just use current for the time being, they output the same amount of current. So let's just say, for the argument's sake, 90 amps, they can both deliver up to 1,500 watts of corded equivalent power, right? But the difference you've got here is that the PROCORE18V Plus can sustain that high draw for much, much longer compared to the PROCORE18V. Okay, so if you're running a machine that does draw high wattage, so high current, up to 1,500 watt, this will last a lot longer. Okay, that's the main difference you get here. So if you were to pop the PROCORE18V Plus battery on a machine that doesn't draw a lot of power, say a nailer or maybe a combi, if you're not using it very heavily, a nailer is a better example. You're probably not going to see a massive benefit compared to the PROCORE18V because the battery cells aren't getting hammered. They're not getting hot.
There's not enough constant draw to tax the cells enough that you require something with such free-flowing energy.
Exactly. But trust me, there's plenty of applications, and you guys know about them. You're using tools continuously for certain things. That's the kind of application when you're running a bi-turbo tool, heavy and hard for a long period of time. PROCORE18V Plus. That will solve a lot of your problems when it comes to runtime. Any other questions?
Yep, we had another question from Toby asking, do Bosch now produce their own cells? And someone else has asked if we use the same tabless technology patented by Tesla.
Right, first question, do we manufacture our own cells? Officially, no. Most cells are manufactured by a number of cell specialists. You may be aware of them already. We always purchase and utilize the best quality cells to put into our battery packs. These are obviously then manufactured in Bosch factories, Bosch plants.
At the place where they're usually mined. So it's not worth anyone's time to ship raw materials around the world to then create the cells. So they're actually created at the point where the materials are mined out the ground. So lithium and cobalt.
Now, the tabless cell technology is not something that is unique to Bosch. Okay, so the cell technology is I guess, owned by is from the actual cell manufacturers themselves. What we do with them obviously is very important, and there are some other manufacturers out there that use them. However, we are the first people to create a 18-volt power tool battery utilizing tablet cell technology.
So you can get when you're using a slightly smaller machine or something with just 18 volt, you can get the benefits of tabless, but only with us.
Exactly, and the fact that we basically force multiply the PROCORE18V battery pack because of all the active and passive heat technology features to reduce internal resistance and reduce heat. That's really where all these things come together. So, to answer your question shortly, it's not a Bosch patented system. Is it similar to Tesla's? Similar. Now, I don't know, I can't remember off the top of my head whether or not Tesla used the tabless 21700 cells or whether or not they already jumped to the bigger ones that are also tabless.
Yeah, they have in the past used 21700 cells, but as far as I'm aware, the tabbed ones, so their new cells are larger cells, and they would probably be tabless,
They definitely are. I think they're much bigger and much stubbier, but they've got more surface area inside. With the 21700s, I don't know whether or not Tesla ever did 21700 tablets. Maybe they did, and they've moved on to bigger ones since. But if they did, then we're using the same cells as those then.
We have another question from PF Cutters saying, also, would you be making and bringing out 5.5 amp and 12 amp 18 volt PROCORE Plus tabless batteries?
All we can say at this stage is watch this space.
I think that's
you would expect so, right? Because there's a big difference. There's an important thing to point out that this is an example of the original 21700 that went into the PROCORE18V battery. I think it's the 60T, is it? I've got to remind myself. I forget which one this is. The tablet cells are exactly the same physical size.
Yeah, there's no external size difference.
Okay, so that means we could quite easily, without any retooling, which is good because we don't want to have to mess around with our batteries. We want to keep them the same size and weight that you expect. We could just we could replace the tabbed cells and replace them with the tabless cells straight into the same housing away you are to go. So you would expect, not saying anything, but you would expect, it's not very difficult, to just swap out in the future the cells from our existing PROCORE18V range with tabless cells to make a whole new range of 18V Plus range.
Yeah, funnily enough, it's not going to affect the watt hours from the battery either. So you're not going to. It's not going to mess around with any legal restrictions as far as shipping cells as well. So even if you change that on a 5.5, which is commonly known as a 99 watt hour battery, so we can ship it all around the country, you're not going to have that same issue because obviously watt hours is volts times amps.
Exactly.
So volts times amps are not changing. This is just flowing energy much easier.
So hopefully, without hinting too much, think like that. I think I've hinted quite heavily. There's no reason why in the near future we will have an entire range of 18V PROCORE 18V Plus batteries. Yeah. It's not hard for us to do. Okay.
I've got another question asking if the new battery tech is compatible with AmpShare.
Well, hold on. Let's cut to the overhead camera very quickly for us, and you'll see. Ta-da! Obviously, absolutely 100% compatible with our AmpShare partners because this battery, like all others, is fully compatible with our entire range of 18-volt batteries. Actually, if we jump quickly to a slide that I've got already, I almost anticipated it. So look, this is a good example of many of the batteries that you might have seen and used. We've even put in the wireless charging batteries.
Yep.
I miss those, to be honest.
I think
but they're still compatible. All the way back since 2008, we've had full battery compatibility on our tools, our batteries obviously, and the chargers. PROCORE was the same, and then finally, of course, the PROCORE 18V Plus batteries will also feature in that, which means, look, the main focus for the PROCORE 18V Plus batteries is for our bi-turbo range. That's where you'll get the most benefit out of it because these are the machines that require the most energy that are really going to tax that battery, right? Obviously, the entire 18-volt professional system is all compatible with this battery as well, and like our commenter made a mention, the AmpShare Alliance also features into that as well. Yeah. So as long as the machine fits an 18-volt battery, then, an 18V Bosch Professional battery, I should be clear to add, then there'll be no problems at all running the PROCORE 18V Plus battery.
Yep.
Medi's asked, will we see 12-volt battery packs with this new technology?
Interesting.
The issue with the 12 volt, I think we covered before in one of the previous live streams, is because it fits within the actual handle of the machine on many of the 12 volt products. And we're currently using 18650 cells, so smaller cells, as we did in our original core pack batteries. These need to fit inside the handle of those machines. Now, making the cells bigger means the battery would have to be bigger.
Yeah, if you punch over the overhead very quickly, I've got an example of an 18650 cell. So these are the ones that are in the standard cool pack batteries, like this example here with the 6 amp hour battery. Okay, and obviously these are the ones that currently power our 12 volt batteries. You'll see that the diameter of the 21700 cell, not only is it longer and wider, right? The tablet cells use the same format as the 21700. So as Danny was pointing out, that you'd have to modify the housing.
I suppose the only other way would be to be like a stick battery that would fit into the housing and then to house the 21700s.
Yeah.
The other thing is from the 12 volt range is they're a lighter duty tool. So do you really need the extra performance that you would get from a 21700 cell?
That's always the important thing. People, because of the original question before we had 18V Plus, the PROCORE 18V Plus batteries, is whether or not we were going to put the cells from the old PROCORE battery into 12, and that was the same answer we gave, the size. But there's always the point: do you need the performance? Why would you need a 12 volt PROCORE?
Yeah, and you're talking about extra weight there as well. There's a few issues that maybe sidestep the criteria that is really built around the 12 volt range of a lighter machine for lighter duty work.
So we'll say probably not yet. It would need a redesign of some kind.
Yes, and then we don't really want to mess with our backwards and forwards compatibility. What I would suggest though is if you want extra runtime from your 12 volt product, jump at the 4 amp and the 6 amp hour double stack batteries. Fantastic addition to any 12 volt toolkit you have.
Yeah. If I'm looking around the room trying to see if I've got one to show as an example,
No,
but
you don't, no.
we've shown it before. If you look at if you want to go back and look at the 12 volt special, the 12 volt range special, we talk about all the different battery types. You can see the 4 and the 6 amp hour double stack batteries for 12 volt. Cool.
Stuart is wondering what runtime will he get with his GTS 18 volt 216 with PROCORE 18 volt plus.
That's an interesting one. We haven't done the data on that one. If you've joined late and you haven't seen, we've got a table that shows some of the runtime benefits. We haven't done a test but I'd expect you would get one, especially like a table saw. If you're constantly using it, you're keeping that battery's constantly generating heat, and you're not giving it enough time to cool down. I'd expect that you would definitely see a benefit. How much? I don't know yet. We could work that one out.
If you're running worktops or something, some thicker hardwood material, something that's really taxing the motor, then yes, anything that produces heat, you're going to get a benefit from these batteries. But like I said, we haven't actually done any details on the table saw yet. But it's definitely something that we'll.
I wonder if it will be similar to maybe it will be something similar to what we get with our miters, or maybe the circ saw. Maybe it's trying to find something of a near enough equivalent.
Yeah. They're all either bigger or smaller blades though, so nothing that really sits in that 8-inch or 216mm blade category.
But categorically, I can almost put my name on it. You will definitely get a benefit. But how much? We'll do the test and find out.
Marcus Horn asks, would these be an advantage in my GBH 18V 24C?
Now the 24 is not a bi-turbo machine. It's a standard machine, which works perfectly with your cool pack batteries or the 4 Ah ProCore. There is some advantage, I guess, generally speaking, running a ProCore battery. Generally speaking, anyway, but like the PROCORE18V Plus battery is like a ProCore. Like it's a bigger ProCore battery for the bigger machines. So I think you'd find there's not diminishing returns, but you'd have to use that 24, that GBH 18V-24C, really heavy in order to tax, let alone a ProCore, but a ProCore Plus. So I would say maybe not
a job like maybe tile removal or something like that, where you're just
constant load,
low load, but spinning offload for a long period of time. Then yes, maybe something that's going to build up some heat in that battery. And
I tell you what you might find as a benefit that we haven't really discussed, if you're working in very hot weather, like we had last year with 40 degrees ambient heat, that's when maybe something like a ProCore Plus might be of a benefit to you, because you're already starting at a much higher starting point. So any extra heat generation will be mitigated by the tablet cell, where the ProCore might start to get that power fade a little earlier. Right, so it's almost like this is your order. You'll start with your cool pack battery for your standard applications. If you want to step up, you can go to your ProCore batteries, ProCore18V batteries, and then in really heavy duty, either applications or environment, then you've got the option now. This is it, it's the option. You don't have to use this. You've got the option now to upgrade for the ProCore18V Plus battery.
But yeah, even if you do have a high draw, larger machine that will take advantage of this, it will still fit the rest of your products that you've got that are 18 volt as well. So again, a couple of these will do your entire set.
Yeah.
PF Cutters is asking, will we be bringing out a 1-inch high torque impact wrench to maximise this new battery technology?
Well, in the office we've got some new products. It's not a 1-inch drive, but we will be wanting to talk about that as soon as we can, because it's a product that's coming out next year. There is potentially the benefit for that tool. But I can at least categorically tell you at this current moment in time, we're not looking, or I haven't seen any development of a 1-inch drive.
Not of a 1-inch, no.
As you probably already know, anything over 1,000 Newton meters is going to the 3/4.
Yes.
Tool attachment, or sorry, socket attachment. Model that one a bit. But nothing 1-inch yet.
No.
And trust me, the machine that's coming out next year,
that's a heavy hitter.
That's already producing a lot of torque, and it's not needing to go up to an 1-inch drive yet.
No, not yet.
So.
And the last question for now is, when are they going to be available?
Yeah, good. Someone's asked the most important question that we've deliberately not covered, waiting for someone to ask the most important question. Right, so it was last Friday, actually, we had the announcement for the batteries. You hopefully you saw some of the marketing material, the adverts and stuff that have gone out to promote the battery. That happened about 1 p.m. Friday, wasn't it? Right. Before that, we were absolute no. We couldn't even pretend to give any hints to you guys on the live stream. We were absolutely no. You must not. It was so secret.
That's not just external people. That's internal
everyone.
as
that
well.
was it. Yeah, they kept a close eye on us because we're the only ones who had any samples in the country. Right. So that was announced officially on Friday. The official launch date is going to be in February. Well, I say official. The planned launch date is going to be February next year. Okay, and that will be the 8 amp hour PROCORE18V Plus battery, and also they'll be supplying that, or our distribution, our dealers will be also available to supply that as what we call an energy kit, which is basically 2 batteries and a charger, which is going to be our top of the range charger, the GAL 18V-160.
Yeah, so the 16 amp one we're talking about.
Right. Important to note while we're talking about charging, it's still just an 8 amp hour battery. It's not a high, it's not trying to compensate for power or runtime by using more amp hours. It's 8 amp hour, up to 71% longer runtime because it's a more efficient battery. It doesn't waste its heat. It utilizes lower internal resistance, keep the battery cooler, deliver that energy to the tool, not wasting it.
Exactly.
Okay. Right, so we're out of questions, but essentially we're almost out of material, to be honest, because we've covered everything we wanted to show. It's not just a battery, there's a lot to it. When we were presenting this previously, and we haven't been presenting it that much, some people don't quite understand the real benefit they're getting, right? Because you're not sacrificing weight and size for a bigger, higher amp hour battery. It's not like a triple layer battery like we've got with our 12 amp hour batteries, right? It's all contained in the same double layer, relatively compact double layer battery pack we've got. It's important to know that also there are some other technologies we've got. There are other battery technologies out there.
Yeah.
Okay, so people, I'm surprised no one's actually asked us about pouch batteries, unless that's the question that Ella's got. No, good. So pouch batteries is an alternative way of getting similar runtime and similar thermal mechanics. Okay, the idea that you can run pouch batteries harder at high draw for longer, right?
You're still going to be producing heat, though.
You're going to still be producing heat, right? So we can say that the tabless cell has similar characteristics to the pouch battery. But there are some drawbacks to the pouch battery that do not exist for the cylindrical based cells that we use in both the PROCORE18V and obviously the cylindrical tabless cells that we use in the PROCORE18V Plus.
Most of those are mitigated by that HDPE material.
Exactly. So one of the limitations for a pouch battery is because the pouches, if you ever see a pouch battery, they're relatively delicate, they're relatively fragile. So you have to build extra protection into the battery packs themselves to protect the cells from both thermal expansion, because they sometimes can swell a little bit, or more importantly, physical damage, isn't it? Because you don't want a battery to get damaged, obviously, because if you pierce a battery, it's bad.
Yes.
But the pouch batteries typically will be more delicate in their natural state, so you have to build extra protection. So because of that, you tend to have to build bigger and heavier batteries to compensate.
For a smaller amp hour battery, makes perfect sense because you can have that nice and small and compact, make it into different shapes and more ergonomic. But for the larger amp hour batteries, or the higher draw amp hour batteries, then
That's right.
the size does increase considerably.
So for those who aren't aware, I mean, we haven't got an example to show, but a pouch battery is very similar to the kind of one you will have in a laptop or maybe in the back of your mobile phone if you've ever had a look. They need that extra protection. Because we haven't we're still using cylindrical cells, we can still build a very solid, rugged battery that doesn't change size. It's not heavier, it's not bigger, it's what you expect from our PROCORE range.
We're already ahead of the field, even when we go back to the original cool pack batteries, so far as the technology that we built into them goes.
So Ella, another question has come through.
Yep, so we've had a few questions from people asking if this means that the standard PROCORE batteries will be discontinued.
I think the nice way of saying it is that over time, as we roll out more batteries running this tabless cell technology, then we will slowly phase out the standard, I say standard, the tabbed 21700 cells, in general in our batteries. But I don't expect this will happen anytime soon. The PROCORE18V battery still has a very valid place in the range. Remember, the PROCORE18V Plus battery, that's designed for very heavy duty machines. For many bi-turbo machines that aren't continuous draw, like the concrete nailer as an example, or even maybe the combis in some cases, you know, that you won't necessarily need that extra runtime that you get, or that you won't need the extra headroom you get for PROCORE18V+.
It's not a consistent power of the combi, is it? You literally, even if you're running a long screw, you're driving the screw and then you're putting it down, and that's when the cooling takes place.
If you find that you actually do need, say for example, your combi or your drill driver to constantly drive big screws that are high draw, get a battery that's an 18. Get the get the PROCORE18V Plus battery. Absolutely. But if you don't think you need it, then the standard PROCORE battery, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. This isn't a need to automatically upgrade. It's horses for courses. It depends on what your job is, what your application, what your tool is. If you feel the need for it, if you feel like the PROCORE batteries are getting hot in your application and they're starting to throttle down, you have the option. Okay, but I would expect over the next year or so, I think we will slowly start introducing more amp hour versions of the PROCORE18V Plus, and then maybe over time the normal PROCORE will start to phase out, and then we'll have completely tabless batteries. It's just the progress of technology.
Yes.
Okay.
A few people have also been asking if this new battery will be more expensive than the standard PROCORE battery.
I think there's no pricing yet that's out.
No.
Obviously, when it launches next year, we'll have a better idea of pricing. I wouldn't expect, and remember, Danny and I are trainers, so we don't tend to get involved in the pricing, but we've kind of got a bit of heads up that it's not going to be a big price increase. We're not expecting, it's not going to be twice as expensive or anything crazy like that. There will be a minor premium, I reckon, on the 18V Plus battery, but it will be more than worth it. When it comes to price to runtime benefit, it's a no-brainer. Yeah.
Someone's just said, to clarify, my question is about the standard non-ProCore cool pack batteries, in particular the nice and light 2 amp size, and whether that might be discontinued.
Ah, right. So stuff like the cool pack battery. I mean, I've got the example of the 6, but I know what you mean. I mean, you're talking about the
single layer.
They're talking about the compacts. Maybe. It's speculation. I would say there's still a place for the compact batteries, even the standard 18650 cool pack batteries. Some of it's price point, because you might not need or want a normal battery, or definitely not a ProCore battery. So I would say, and some people prefer actually the form factor, a much smaller battery. So I've seen nothing that indicates that we're getting rid of our compact cool pack batteries yet.
Well, if you're for instance a boiler installer and you're popping the covers off boilers all the time, you don't need a big machine. You want a light machine that can quickly do the job.
That's right.
So something like that, a small single layer cool pack version 1 battery, perfect battery for the job. Nice and light.
Yep. And again, just talking about the old cool pack battery, remember the one running the 18650 cells, right? We've got no plans, we discussed this earlier, we've got no plans to do anything with the 12 volt range.
No.
And that runs on the same cells. So I would say we're still going to be manufacturing batteries that run this cell for quite a long time.
Yeah. So to stop doing the standard cool pack batteries in that slimmer size, I think that would be a mistake.
PF Cutters asks, to add to the question I asked earlier about if you would be bringing out a 12 amp tabless battery, will this be launching at the same time with the new bi-turbo lawnmower?
Well, the lawnmower we are predicting to come out early next year.
Yep.
I think the roadmap for the ProCore 18V Plus battery lineup doesn't align with that. This battery is coming out around, remember the ProCore 18V Plus battery is going to be coming out around the time of the mower, around about. And as I said, let's just call it the triple layer. A triple layer 18V Plus battery will be further down the line.
Yes.
Okay. So no, unfortunately not at the same time.
Not at the same time, no.
Marcus Horn is asking, when will we be bringing out Workwear?
Oh yeah, Workwear. as always, Marcus, you're still the only one in the chat. So get some friends together. Yeah, put some more effort in it, mate. It's just you. Yeah. We can't afford to run an entire factory just to do Marcus.
He's not even told us his size, so how come?
You'd have to be an absolutely massive size for us to dedicate an entire plant to you, mate. So keep trying. Eventually, you might make. Actually, you know what? It has made some effect. Some people have noticed your comments, Marcus, but they're not the right people. So keep going.
We have another question saying, sorry if it's been answered as I've only just joined the chat, but it sounds like this would be perfect for the big new Bosch 305 miter saw.
Well, it's not new.
No,
it's not new, but it is exactly. As you said, if you've only just joined, that's fine. Feel free to rewatch it. As we've covered a lot of it. One of the machines was the GCM 18V-305 GDC, easy to roll off the tongue there. And what we were saying to that is you can get up to 41% more cuts.
Yeah,
okay, I think
absolutely perfect for that machine.
So let me double check my numbers. We had, it was a difference between 61 cuts. I've got the specs specifically, but 61 cuts using ProCore 18V, and we had 88 cuts running the ProCore 18V Plus. Right, so a lot more runtime when working really heavy on. It was quite a large bit of wood. I can't remember the specs off the top of my head, but continuously cutting.
That's a lot of fence posts and a lot of joists.
Yes, exactly.
It's
so big benefit. I mean, we're having a lot of discussion of whether or not, maybe you might not have seen it, but a lot of people in the chat saying, would this be a benefit for this machine, etc. That 12-inch miter saw is a prime candidate for this kind of battery. Not necessarily, of course, the ProCore 18V standard. Plenty runtime, plenty power, but if you are finding you're using it very heavily, now you've got the option.
Radine is asking, could we ever see a battery adapter that allowed you to plug into a wall and power directly from a wall socket?
We've had questions about wall adapters. So one more time, read it out again for me. Just want to make sure didn't mishear that one, because there's a couple of ways you can do this. So was it a adapter for a cordless tool? I think it was.
So it'd be like kind of a wall wart plug,
Yeah.
and then a cable to a.
It's to convert a cordless tool into a mains tool.
Yes.
Now I think there's some complex things you have to work out there, because you're working with different forms of power, aren't you?
Yes. Yeah. We're going from AC to DC basically. So you need a rectifier built into that as well. So
It's cost.
Again, there's cost and there's weight and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I won't pretend to be an electrical engineer or anything like that, but yeah, I'm sure there are reasons why we haven't yet.
I think I've like I say, I think. But I'm pretty sure I might have overheard some engineers, maybe when I was over in Leinfelden. I think I was allowed to know this, and I think they were discussing whether or not there's the market for a tool that is has a cord, as well as the ability to put a battery on. So not an adapter, because I think it requires, as you say, more electronics to do this properly, but the option of having a hybrid power source.
Yeah.
And although we haven't seen anything yet, I think there's discussions about it. And I think maybe we just need more feedback to see if that's actually something people really use. A lot of people on site, generally speaking, are usually very happy to run their battery-powered solutions because their job requires it. But if you are, like, maybe you've got a hybrid job and you're in the workshop most of the time, but you want the flexibility to just take that machine straight out without having to have another machine to run on site, I can see the advantage. The question would be, how much are you willing to pay for that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. And how many of you out there would be willing to pay for that?
Yeah, exactly. An adapter is not as easy as I don't think an adapter is as easy as we think it is.
No.
Okay.
Sorry, I lost the question there.
No,
but
I think we got it.
yes,
Yeah.
adapter for cordless tools.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I mean, if there are people doing it already, it'll be keen to see. I'm not familiar with anyone doing it or not doing it well. I think is the best way of saying it. But feel free to pop some examples in the chat or in the comments after the live stream, and I'll have a look at them. Yeah.
Certainly.
Radine also says he stands with Marcus and he wants workwear.
He's got one. He's got one other person.
on side.
Yeah. Right. We're up to 2. Let's see if we can do more.
They both put their sizes in the chat.
Oh. Okay.
All right.
But yeah, I think that's all the questions for now.
Okay, perfect. Well, let's ramble for a minute and see whether or not anyone comes up with any more questions. Do a quick roundup, and if no one asks any more questions, then we can head off.
Yeah.
One of the questions I might ask people in the chat is, obviously we started a little later this week, partly because we've had some feedback saying that a later start time is better. We assumed that you guys were logging off work early, logging in, you don't log in, coming home from work earlier, not earlier, later than we thought. We thought you'd come home around 4 and that's your day done, but apparently not. I think a lot of people are saying actually a later start. We don't think we can do 7 because we've got families and cats and homes to go to. So it'd be nice to know whether or not the 5 p.m. start was better. We decided we were going to do 5 p.m. today because it's a special. On that note, we're not going to have a live stream next week. We want a little bit of a break before Christmas. So we've done 2 in a row. So we won't have one on, I think it was the 20th is the next one that was originally scheduled. So we're going to have a little break and have one, I think it's the 6th of December is the next one we're going to have. As a quick roundup, Dan? So what should we say? A quick roundup on what PROCORE18V Plus is?
Basically, PROCORE18V Plus is more power, lower temperatures, higher energy draw machines, being able to run harder for longer.
Exactly. Much more runtime without having to have more amp hours, a more efficient battery.
Yeah.
And remember, utilising that tabless cell technology to achieve that lower internal resistance, making this a far better battery, as Danny says, for high draw applications, big machines, bi-turbo machines that you're really hammering hard. So if you've got that kind of application, PROCORE18V Plus battery is the one for you. Right, okay. No more questions?
No more questions, but people are agreeing that it's a better start time.
Perfect. Okay.
Great.
5
Perfect.
p.m. Okay. It gives us more time to prepare, which...
Does that mean I can get in later in the morning?
Yeah, let's ask that. We'll ask our bosses that. Well, yeah, we'll come in at least another hour late.
Yeah,
An hour
that's
late,
fair
that's good.
enough,
Yeah. So we'll only come in at 8. For you, maybe, not me. Okay, so thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed that. Hopefully we didn't bore you too much with all the techie stuff. But in order to explain the difference between our standard cylindrical cell batteries and this new tabless cell technology, we had to go down a little bit of the techie line.
You did have to nerd out a little bit there.
I was more than happy, but I don't know whether or not you guys were. Let us know whether or not you want to see more nerdy stuff, and I can excel. Tell us again whether or not you want to have later starts. Pop all these questions in the chat. If you've got any other questions, let us know. Other than that, thank you very much from myself.
And thank you very much from me. And don't forget to like and subscribe.